How bad does it have to get before the market realizes that these aren't just temporary problems? It's a global reset. Things aren't just bad. They're really bad. Israel just hit Iran's two biggest steel factories. Trump is threatening to bomb or obliterate electric plants, oil wells, and desalination plants if Iran doesn't strike a deal. Oil is ripping, bonds are bleeding, and Japan is importing inflation right through its energy bills. This is not a drill. And it's also not the end of the story, because historically, more fear has created more opportunity. And I want to show you today why, although this setup is terrifying for the rest of the world, it's exactly the setup that you want, because Bitcoin is still cheap. And I'm going to show you why. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go. Let's just start with the craziest clip that you may ever see. You have to remember, this is the leader, Jerome Powell, of global policy and interest rates.
What's clear is that our debt is growing much faster. The federal government debt is growing substantially faster than our economy, and that ratio is going up. And in the long run, that's kind of the definition of unsustainable. The level of the debt is not unsustainable, but the path is not sustainable. And so it's really important that we get back to, we don't have to pay the debt down. We just need to have primary balance and begin to have the economy actually growing better, growing more quickly than the economy. It will not end well if we don't do something fairly soon. This is not the Fed's job, of course, and I pretty much limit myself to those high-level points which essentially everyone ignores.
Did you hear that? We're on an unsustainable path that will not end well if we don't do something soon. And to make matters worse, we've got a war going on. Israel just hit Iran's two largest steel factories, one of Iran's biggest non-oil revenue sources. Iran produces 32 million tons of steel every year, and those steel factories account for over 50% of that output. And then Trump basically comes out and says this: if you don't reach a deal, we're going to bomb every other piece of infrastructure that you count near and dear to your economy. So let's not act like mainstream media acts like, saying that things are calming down because they're having discussions. And if the Strait of Hormuz continues to stay closed for longer, well, things are going to get worse. As Ledn says, who's much smarter than me, each day the Strait of Hormuz remains closed is a growing global catastrophe that people are sleepwalking into. So yeah, this is the headline, Brent above $115, but that's not the story. Here's all of the ripple effects that have happened since the war in Iran started. Heating oil up 77%, European natural gas up 71%, diesel up 44%, sulfur 43%, fertilizer 29%. This isn't just inflation of one or two things. This is going to cause total supply chain inflation. And if you want to know what happens when things get scary, watch Japan. The yen just hit its lowest level against the dollar in 21 months. And Japan is an example of what happens when things get really bad, when you become dependent on too many other countries, because 87% of their energy is imported from other places. 70% of it flows through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's why you're seeing global bonds sell off in a huge way. $4.7 billion in outflows. That's the second largest on record, only second to the great pandemic in 2020. The bond market needs help. And so if Japan begins selling US treasuries, well, look out. And everybody's always got something to say about Bitcoin, as if Bitcoin's the only thing selling off right now. Matter of fact, Bitcoin actually looks pretty good bouncing between 60 and 70 right now. You know what's beginning to flip? Well, things that are selling off that were once stores of values like gold. The Mag 7 is getting cooked this year. From Apple to Microsoft, they're all underperforming the S&P 500. But everybody seems to just focus on Bitcoin for whatever reason. But you know what I think? When I see sell-offs, more fear equals more opportunities. Here's a great chart from Charlie Bilello. When the VIX is sitting within 10% of its highs, well, you typically see 5-year returns forward of 85% or more. So when the world sees volatility, I think Bitcoin is still cheap. And don't just take it from me. Take it from one of the greatest investors of all time. Probably the greatest investor of all time, Warren Buffett, who says that during wars, you shouldn't be holding cash. During every single war, cash has lost its value. You need to own assets.
When people start to think, well, this could be the beginning of something really bad, it could be even a World War III situation, it could be a return to the Cold War. Does any of that ever go through your mind?
Well, if you tell me all of that's going to happen, I will still be buying the stock. You're going to invest your money in something over time. The one thing you could be quite sure of is if we went into some very major war, the value of money would go down. I mean, that's happened in virtually every war that I'm aware of. So the last thing you'd want to do is hold money. during a war. And you might want to own a farm, you might want to own an apartment house, you might want to own securities. But I mean, during World War II, the stock market advanced, and the stock market is going to advance over time. American businesses are going to be worth more money. Now, dollars are going to be worth less, so that money won't buy you quite as much. But you're going to be a lot better off owning productive assets over the next 50 years than you will be owning pieces of paper, or I'm going to throw in bitcoins.
He makes fun of Bitcoin in this clip, but he's been absolutely demolished by Bitcoin's returns since he posted that out loud. You want to preserve your purchasing power. You want to think about your monetary survival not just during the war, but across decades. Because if the world is going to more debt, more shocks, more war, more interventions, you're going to want something that doesn't lose its economic energy and power. And that's exactly why Saylor believes in Bitcoin long term. He's thinking like an engineer. What's going to lose less purchasing power and less economic energy over time? The answer is Bitcoin.
The fully diluted Bitcoin count was 21 million. And the significance of that is that means the inflation rate's 0. But the inflation rate on gold is 2%. And the fully diluted gold count is infinite, because if I keep increasing the amount of gold by 2% a year, that's infinite amount of gold. If you want to figure out practically how you value it, well, when you increase the supply of something by 2% a year, that means that you're doubling the supply every 36 years. That means the economic half-life of your money is 36 years. That means the half-life is 36 years. That means you're going to live 70 years. Okay, well, what's the half-life if the inflation rate is 0? Infinity. So what's your life expectancy if the inflation rate is 0? Your life expectancy is infinite. You're immortal. You're living for 1 billion trillion years.
Like that idea.
0 is 1 billion trillion years. You're a god. 2% is you're going to die, half of you dies in 36 years, the other half dies in the next 36 years. Maybe you make 100 years and you're pretty much done for, right? And so it's the difference between a mortal life of a human being versus economic immortality. We can dismiss it if we just think in the next 12-month time frame. But, if you're an engineer, it's like, well, what's the difference between you lose 2% of your energy every cycle versus you lose none of your energy every cycle? None of your energy every cycle is perpetual motion. You last forever. 2% of your energy every cycle, and you spend it 100 times, there's nothing left, right? You burn out the motor. Okay, so I like the idea of gold, but digital gold is better. And how much better? Infinitely better, right? Infinitely better.
Quick pause. Let's thank our sponsors. If you've been following this show for any amount of time, you know one of the things that we always sell is never sell your best asset for a worse asset. It's going to go up forever, Laura. Never sell your Bitcoin. And you can do that by working with a vendor like Ledn, who for the first time today is lowering their rates from 12.49% down to 9.9% to 11.5%. They want to pass more savings on to their customers, despite interest rates rising. It's the right thing to do, and they've been the leader in this industry since 2018, never losing a single cent or sat of customer money. You get an institutionally grade product while never selling your Bitcoin. Go to learn.ledn.io/simple to get started. No credit checks, money in your account in less than 6 hours. Application just takes 2 minutes. And if you've been following along for any amount of time, we talk about not just number go up technology, but freedom go up technology. You never get that freedom unless you truly break free from the system. And you can't break free if you can't have the keys to unshackle your chains from the existing banking system. And one of the ways you can do that is by working with a leader at the Bitcoin way. Members of their team will help you unshackle from the banking system today and own your private keys, own your sovereignty, and own your future. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation with their team at thebitcoinway.com/partner/Dante-Cook. The biggest thing that you need to optimize for during war isn't just number go up. It's survival. And that's why I love this clip from this conversation between Tucker Carlson and the CEO of Telegram, who's had hundreds of billions of Bitcoin in his account for years. But the number one thing he cares about is freedom.
Also, for me, it was never about money, right? So I have a few $100 million in my bank account or in Bitcoin since 10 years ago, and I don't do anything with it. I don't own any real estate, jets, or yachts. I don't think this lifestyle is for me. I like to focus on what we are doing with Telegram.
You don't own anything? Like big assets? You don't own
no big assets. Exactly.
An island in Hawaii or...
No.
No
no
plan.
no land, no real estate, nothing.
Why?
Well, because for me, my number one priority in life is my freedom.
So when you see volatility, when you see the war going on, understand that Bitcoin is still cheap from a monetary perspective because, as Jerome Powell says, we're on an unsustainable path. A path that leads to either recognizing that the system doesn't work and admitting it to everybody, that they've been fooling people for years, or print more money, kick the can down the road. That's the more likely option. And when they do that, they're not just going to give away money for free. Something always has a cost attached to it. And that cost shouldn't just be evaluated on the monetary asset value that it has, but on the amount of freedom that it provides you when things hit the fan. And that's why we advocate for Bitcoin on the show. It's not just number go up technology, it's freedom go up technology. And so while the world is sleepwalking into a catastrophe, Bitcoin is still cheap for more than one reason. If you get value from this show, as always, subscribe. We're dropping new value, new fire every single day of the week. And if you haven't already started stacking beyond just buying spot Bitcoin, you can work with the leaders in Bitcoin mining at SAS Mining. Give them your cash and your money, and they help you to buy a Bitcoin mining machine. They keep it up, they maintain it, and they send sats directly to your wallet. Sleep well knowing that you're decentralizing the network and you're earning sats 24 hours a day. Use the QR code to get started. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.